Okay, remember that they're changing the sound of my voice. This video is about people for... Okay, remember that they're changing the sound of my voice. This video is for people in Michigan and people all over the world, really. It is about my War on Poverty plan for Michigan, which can be a model for every country in the world. We'll get into that in another video. Recently, there were some cards put up in various places in the Southfield area that may direct people to this video. Pretty straightforward. So I have a War on Poverty plan I want to talk to you about briefly. We'll touch on my top martial arts challenge and wrap this up here. So first of all, my War on Poverty plan basically is a plan that includes wealth taxes and cost-effective spending and oversight. Okay, oversight is key here because we have to make sure the spending is cost-effective, and we have to make sure that everyone on this planet understands that wealth taxes and cost-effective spending works. For example, if every rich person paid just 1 penny a year, would the economy collapse? No. If they paid $100 a year, would the economy collapse? No. And so there's people that need to be housed, there's people who need to be fed, so we have to figure out what the perfect number is. And one number I came up with is that people who are worth $1 million and more, depending on their situation, whether they just have a house worth $1 million and they're scraping by, what have you, they pay $8,000 a year on average. On average. Okay? Pretty straightforward. That's not that much money. If you do it by month, what have you, it is not that much money. It's easily affordable. Say, for example, if you have $2.5 million and you pay your share of the plan for 10 years and you come in at about average, right? That's only $80,000 in those 10 years. In 20 years, $160,000. But if you've invested wisely in your house or whatever, you might even have $5-6 million then, even having paid the $160,000 over 20 years. So the tax is a progressive tax, right? It has to do with averages. Who is worth what money and why. Okay, so when I did the math based on how many millionaires and billionaires there are in Michigan and everything, how it breaks down basically is this. In the first year, there'll be $1.52 billion for housing the homeless, and we should be able to house them as fast as we can build the units. That should be enough to house them. And after that, we just have to stay ahead of it. So it would end homelessness maybe in a year and 2 months, maybe 6 months, depending on if we build tiny homes or we do this or that, what have you. There would also be $2 billion in the first year for affordable housing. Okay. There will be $1.05 billion the first year for rehabs. Now we would get it is wealth taxes. And when it comes to that, it's luxury taxes. Okay. It's vice taxes. 5% on cannabis and alcohol and cigarettes. Now bear with me now. Some people, you might not agree with that, right? Well, think of it like this. Some estimates go like this, that there's about $800 billion spent every year in the healthcare system on substance abuse. Okay, this is just a small fraction of money compared to that. So we're all kind of bearing the burden for substance abuse. And a 5% cannabis tax, cigarette tax, alcohol tax isn't that much. Say, for example, you spend $100 a month on cannabis, cigarettes, alcohol. That's only $5 a month. If you can't afford that, your problem is you're spending $100 a month on that, not the 5. And say with the 200 and the 10 and the 400 and the 20. It's not that much money, but it brings in $1.05 billion every year for rehabs. We'd also have a farming program that we would spend $2.35 billion on the first year. So also for law enforcement, we would bring in $294 million the first year for more law enforcement, because that helps people, wage a war on poverty in various ways. When you combat crime, you combat things like theft and things of that nature that end up costing people, especially poor people, a lot of money. And that's a story for another day. I want to keep this brief here. There'll also be $147 million a year for temporary job programs for people who are drug addicts who need to work a job really quickly for half an hour, 2 hours, to get $20 so they can get their drugs. So they don't have to rob somebody. Okay? but really we want to get them into the rehabs. It's a story for another day. And there'd be $147 million for the most viable startup companies that a committee that I wouldn't be on, mind you. I have no intention to be on that committee, but a committee of good people, ideally, okay, and that's how it should be, would decide. They would decide who gets the money for what startup companies. Pretty straightforward. I'll be talking about this more in the future now. So now let me briefly touch on my top martial arts challenge and wrap it up here. Like you saw on the card, if you saw the card, the word martial is the word marital scrambled. And the bridegroom, okay, marital is in marriage, mind you, the bridegroom is Christ. Now the miracles are figurative. Christ is superimposed on the idea of the King of Kings, the top martial arts King of Kings of the whole world, and the generational anointment. After my flesh dies, that's it. I know a lot of people don't want that to be said, but I have to tell the truth about everything. The way, the truth, and the life are key in everything. Okay. So if you think about David and Goliath, right, the root and offspring of David, you look at Revelation 22, verse 16. I am the root and offspring of David and the bright morning star. New Living Translation. I am both the source of David and the heir to his throne, which points to generational anointment. If you see Proverbs 30, verse 4, it says, New Living Translation, who holds the wind in his fists, right? The Greek word for wind is the same as the word for spirit for a reason. And the Greeks weren't the experts on these things or something, but it strongly suggests and screams that what he's referring to is who has the Spirit of God in his fists, right? And how do we prove that, right? Should we beat each other senseless? No. Should we fight to the death? No. Spar it in spirit. Spar and up to par, right? To spear it, right? A motion, a spiritual motion, a warrior motion. The root and offspring of David, David versus Goliath, David versus the Jebusites, David versus the Philistines. We also see where it talks about the storm of the Lord in Jeremiah, the whirlwind of the Lord, the chariots of the Lord coming on a cloud. What moves the cloud? It's the wind. And there's so many reasons I'm right. And I have a video playlist called the Proof I'm Christ playlist. Now, I'm being persecuted to some degree, but don't worry about that. I've easily outmaneuvered them over the years. We can outmaneuver them together. Obviously, there's some people who don't want these plans to pass. They don't want people to know who I am. You don't have to agree with me and my religion, which is universal pinpoint and moral precision, to work with me on the war on poverty plan. So if anyone has any questions, please put it in the comments. Okay. I'll end it there. Thank you.